What's up, Pursuit Youth? As you guys might already know, last week we kicked off our What is Love series. This week we've got another video for you, but if you don't know what it is, every small group within our youth ministry has created a little bit of a creative expression as to what they think love is. For the next couple weeks in February, we're going to check out a couple different ones, so tune in to find out what the next one is.
Shake on, shake on, shake on, shake on.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Tryna play mind games like venison. Don't try to change the past, it's irrelevant. Renting air closet to skeletons, pen game like I just swallowed an M&M. You cannot sleep, stay awake. Thinking about yesterday's mistakes all night. Hop on a beat with 808s. It's a whole lot of pain you can't erase. Wrap it up like a bandage. Try to fix things, all they do is take advantage. Now it feels like your heart's cut up with a hatchet, and the fragments buried in a casket. It's tragic, that's the price of attachment. I'ma keep it real, I don't really understand it. I just do my best to show a lot of compassion, and that's the essential commandment.
Why you always trying to get the loot? Why you always trying to be on cue? Why you always focus on holding some hand when you got Jesus Christ as your boo? Y'all be trying on holding to the strap, and we out here living in a trap. You be out here hustling for gain, church when you should be running for the church. Steps you're getting offended by cheating. You may be vaping and daily still bleeding. These habits may be hard to break, but in Jesus Christ is healing. You thought we were done with the flow? No, let's backtrack and start it up with Iwi, bro.
TikToking with that chit-chappy. Heard you duck me like a bitmoji. Yeah, greatest of all time, GOAT. You're no longer the. You're the god for speaking the past tense. You dropped what could have been your last sentence. But we in the future, in a new year. Love the neighbor, love our savior. Don't worry, cause there's nothing to separate his love from you. Good, bad, sinner, saint, his love for me and you. Don't worry, cause there's nothing to separate his love from you. Good, bad, sinner, saint, his love for me and you.
Tryna play mind games like venison. Don't try to change the past, it's irrelevant. Renting air closet to skeletons, pen game like I just swallowed an M&M. You cannot sleep, stay awake. Thinking about yesterday's mistakes all night. Hop on a beat with 808s. It's a whole lot of pain you can't erase. Wrap it up like a bandage. Try to fix things, all they do is take advantage. Now it feels like your heart's cut up with a hatchet, and the fragments buried in a casket. It's tragic, that's the price of attachment. I'ma keep it real, I don't really understand it. I just do my best to show a lot of compassion, and that's the essential commandment.
Remember, you should always build your trust in him. You no longer need to cuss his name. Greater than all the fame, racks and stacks. His word is piercing like an axe.
Wrap it up like a bandage. Try to fix things, all they do is take advantage. Now it feels like your heart's cut up with a hatchet, and the fragments buried in a casket. It's tragic, that's the price of attachment. I'ma keep it real, I don't really understand it. I just do my best to show a lot of compassion, and that's the essential commandment.
It's hard to come clean with your problems to Jesus and to find his love. The process is gonna be long. Even I'm struggling with it, but all I need to know is right from wrong. Why you always trying to get the loot? Why you always trying to be on cue? Why you always focusing on holding someone's hand when you got Jesus Christ as your boot? So like, hold up, like when people always like trying to get the loot, so that could be like just like getting new clothes, looking the best. And like, people always are trying to get on cue, and they always have to have something in their way, and always like, you know what I'm saying? Like have to have something and do stuff like that. And like they always have to be at the right time. Like they always have to have this, have that. And also people like these days and our age, people always like trying to get girlfriends and girls and stuff. And that's like, I feel like, well, like you enjoy life now while it's easy, you know what I'm saying? And like y'all are always trying to hold someone's hand. Why do you have to do that when you can have Jesus Christ as your boo? All right.
Sometimes that's the price of attachment. I'll keep it real. I don't really understand it. I just do my best to show a lot of compassion because that's the essential commandment. So basically like sometimes that's parts of attachment. Like when you're attached to something, like it really like hurts to let it go or just to lose it. And it can be hard to like understand sometimes, like, oh, like what went wrong, what could I have done better, or anything. But I think the best way to approach it is like just try to show as much compassion as you can, because like that's the essential, that's one of the essential commandments, right? Like, love God, love your neighbor. So
Y'all be trying to hold on to the strap, and you're out here living in a trap. You're staying and you hustling for gang checks when you should be running for the church steps. I mean, like people these days, people are trying to get afflicted to gangs, and they're trying to get straps and all these gang stuff, like, getting checks of living. And this is like their way of getting money and stuff. Like, why do you need to be like that when you're literally in a trap and the devil could easily just take you? Like, why should you running for that when like there's something like the church and you could just easily run for that, and God's waiting for you to run. And yeah, that's about it.
Hi everyone, I hope you had an amazing weekend with your family and you got to relax a little bit. And I just want to thank you for joining us last Saturday for our virtual Valentine. I hope you had a blast, and for those of you who didn't make it, just tune in because we're going to be uploading the videos on YouTube and on Instagram. Have you guys seen the movie Unbroken? It features Louis Zamperini. He was an Italian who was an Olympic distance runner and also a World War II veteran. I really encourage you to watch it. When his family moved to Torrance, California, Louis experienced being bullied, and he had that urge to have revenge. And so his brother wanted to keep him out of trouble and encouraged him to join the track team. And one of the things his brother told him to keep him going was, if you can take it, you can make it. And sure enough, Louis became a successful track runner, and he even exceeded his brother's ability and later becomes an Olympian. He finishes 8th in the Berlin Olympics in 1936, and he set a new lap record. In 1941, Louis was commissioned into the United States Air Force as a lieutenant, and he served as a bombardier in the Pacific. And one time their plane crashed and they ended up on the ocean for 47 days. And he was there with about 2 crewmates, and they landed on the Japanese occupied Marshall Islands. And so they were captured and they became prisoners of war. They were taken to 2 different prison camps in Japan where he was tortured and beaten by Japanese military personnel. And specifically a man named or known as the Bird, who liked to beat him up or give him a hard time because he found out that he was a famous Olympic runner. When Louis was a prisoner of war, the Japanese tried to convince him to speak Axis power propaganda, and he refused, even though doing so would give him a warm place to live and food. When he declined, he was forced back as to be a prisoner of war, and he was later taken to a new prison camp at a coal factory where he was given a hard time. And after much struggle and victory in World War II by the Axis powers, he was finally released. And following the war, he struggled with post-traumatic stress. During his trying times as a prisoner of war, Louis always recalled his brother's words, and he told himself, if I can take it, I can make it. This built up his inner strength, and it gave him the courage and ability to survive torture and abuse by the Japanese during his captivity. His courage enabled him to refuse to speak the Axis power propaganda that was demanded by his captors. Is there something you're willing to stand up for no matter what the cost? Courage can help you do that. Courage is the inner strength or resilience that we need in order to continue in life. It's a precursor to both confidence and boldness, which we've spoken about. I asked Brennan the other day what he thought courage meant, and he said, it's doing the right thing. I know I need to do or am called to, even though I don't want to do it or I'm scared to do it. Courage is a trait that God told Joshua to have when he had to take leadership, because he needed the inner strength to be a leader, even though he wasn't as old and well known as Moses. He needed inner strength to face over 1 million Jewish people with whatever God had told them they should do. Courage is also a trait Joshua told the Israelites to have in God's call on them to be different, to take over pagan nations and reflect his glory and reflect the glory and righteousness of God in the way they live their lives. In other words, he told them, be courageous in order to be different. God says in Joshua 1:9, have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged, for the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And so Joshua challenged them. God is with you in doing the right thing. Stand out, be different, be courageous. So I'd like to encourage you to have the inner strength to fight and win in the cultural war that we are in. This war could be between the following. It could be Bible culture versus Canadian or North American culture, or media culture, or even family culture. So later in your groups, I'd like you to share examples on how these cultures intersect and how they should differ if we are to live our lives as followers of Jesus. Now let's look at the example of courage in the life of Daniel and his friends in the Bible, and it's actually in the book of Daniel. So the first point I'd like to make about courage is that courage is daring to be different, even when being like everyone else seems like the normal thing to do. When Daniel was a young boy, he was in Jerusalem, and suddenly Nebuchadnezzar and his army from Babylon took over Jerusalem. And what they did was they chose the best young men in the palace. So these were the elites, and they took them into captivity. And the goal was to train these young men to kind of integrate them into the culture of the Babylonians and to educate them in the way of the Babylonians and to use their skills and their ability to help in ruling the empire. And so David and his 3 friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, were the 4 of the men that were captured from Jerusalem. And they were actually men of excellent ability. They were so intelligent, they were good looking, they were healthy. But even though they had all of these qualities, they were different. They had their own lifestyle that was godly, that was patterned after the holiness of God. And this was also applied in their diet. Like they lived a fasted lifestyle. There were things that they refused to eat, such as pork. And at this time, some of the other rich food in the king's palace, like the wine, and I don't know what other rich food they had, that to these young men, they considered it as a violation of their own dietary restrictions in accordance with their faith and their own culture. And so the guy in charge said, you guys have to eat the food here because you have to be healthy. Otherwise, I'm going to get in trouble. But Daniel was like, well, just test us. Let us eat just vegetables and water for 10 days. And you can see it, and you'll find out if we're still healthy and we can still fulfill our responsibilities. And so the guy in charge says, okay, I'll allow you to do that. And so for 10 days, they were able to stick to their diet, stick to their own practices in terms of what their culture allowed them to eat. They did not touch the king's food or the wine. And sure enough, after that, they looked so healthy and they were different. And not only that, they stood before the king, and in every manner of wisdom and understanding about which the king inquired of them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and enchanters that were all in his kingdom, right? And so what happened was they chose to be different. They chose to stick to what their culture, their family culture, their faith culture told them was right. And as a result, they continued to stand out and be different and surpass everybody else in excellence, in health, in probably even physical appearance. So courage is daring to be different, even when being like everyone else seems like the normal thing to do. The second point I'd like to make is that courage is not giving up when trouble comes, but looking for a way to solve the problem and not stopping until you get it. So another story that happened in the book of Daniel was the king had a dream, and he summoned all the wise men and magicians, and he's like, I had a dream, and I want you guys to tell me not just the meaning of the dream, but what the dream was. So tell me what the dream was, and then tell me its meaning. And they were shocked. We're like, who in the world would be able to do that? Only the gods can do that. If you tell us the dream, we can give you the interpretation. He's like, no, if you don't tell me the dream and the interpretation, I'm going to destroy your homes, and I'm going to kill you all, and I'm going to tear you all apart. And Daniel found out about this, and he was like, wait a second here. I don't think we should accept this and just let it happen. And so he asked for time, and he asked for favor, and he said, just give me a chance, and I'm going to ask God what your dream was, and I'm going to ask him what it means. And sure enough, Daniel and his 3 friends, they prayed to God, and they asked him for a solution for their problem. And God revealed the dream to Daniel. And Daniel was able to go back to King Nebuchadnezzar. He was able to tell him the dream. He was able to tell him the interpretation. And as a result, the problem was solved, not only of the king, but of all the magicians and wise men. They would no longer be put to death by Nebuchadnezzar. So Daniel didn't just accept the situation, but he found the inner strength to look for a solution. And he found that in God, and in approaching the king's servant and asking him for time in order to ask God for what the dream was and what it meant. So again, courage is not giving up when trouble comes, but looking for a way to solve the problem and not stopping until you get it. And just like what Louis Zamperini says, if you can take it, you can make it. So I just want to encourage you guys to have courage, have the inner strength to stand up for what you believe in, to not give in to the norm, even though everybody else is doing it, but find out what is God's culture, what is my family culture, and what should I pattern my life after. So in what areas of your life do you need courage? And in what ways has God called you to be different? In what areas do you need to take in the suffering in order to reach your dream? What do you do when you find yourself in a problem? Do you easily give up? I hope that the courage demonstrated by Louis Zamperini and the courage demonstrated by Daniel encourages you to be different and to find solutions and problems that will help you to be victorious this week. God bless you.